What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to a live edition of the NBA Outlet. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron. What's up, Kory?
Nothing much. Another day talking NBA hoops.
Still recovering from that shitty episode of Game of Thrones?
Yeah, it wasn't great. Wasn't great. No spoilers, but not great. They said they could do it in 6 episodes. They could not.
Yeah, they needed like 16. But that's for another whole entire show. Check it out on Full Access Hoops. I know we'll talk about it on there. And then Off the Glass, the movies, probably do some more pop culture stuff as well. But if you want basketball talk, you're at the right place. You can check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. And we'll start off with the game yesterday, which was way better than Game of Thrones. And that was Game 3 of Bucks Raptors. And I'm happy I watched that instead.
I had both up. I was doing a little multitasking because it was pretty slow for Game of Thrones, so I didn't feel bad not giving it my full attention. But, yeah, I mean, double overtime thriller, back and forth battle. You got a lot of Kawhi. Kawhi doing it on, quote-unquote, one leg. Siakam, I thought, was a lot better, a lot more aggressive. Danny Green, we're still looking for him. But, it was a good effort for Toronto. It was a must-win game for Toronto, quite frankly. You can't go down 3-0, and they just kept battling, and finally, in double overtime, they got the win.
Yeah, like you said, really impressive performance from Kawhi Leonard on one leg, because you could tell he was banged up from the first quarter after that layup attempt. He kind of had a weird landing. He wasn't moving properly, but he's able to use his strength and his length to kind of make up for it in different aspects of the game. 36 points, 11 and 25. 52 minutes, which obviously is a lot on a bad leg.
Thought he Siakam on 51.
Yeah, and Kawhi, I thought, did a really good job on Giannis. That was one of the adjustments Nick Nurse made, was a lot more Kawhi on Giannis, and I think that helps Siakam, who you mentioned had a nice game as well, 25 points, 9 of 18. He looked more energized because obviously defending a player like Giannis is going to take a toll on you, but also Marc Gasol looked a lot more aggressive from the beginning, and I think that just helped open up the offense a lot more too.
Yeah, I mean, Marc Gasol was probably the unsung hero in a lot of ways. With the rebounding, the playmaking that he can provide at the center position, 5 blocks too. So he was extremely active around the rim. We kind of saw him look old in games 1 and game 2, and I thought it looked like he had a lot of extra step. Some of the bounce passes he made, I think it was on a Norman Powell cut. He had a wicked nice bounce pass to him. Marc Gasol was really good. And it was a game too where Kyle Lowry was a team best plus 15, and he only shot the ball 7 times. Had 4 rebounds and 5 assists. But the impact Kyle Lowry has, even when he's just being efficient, like he didn't have to take a ton of shots because his impact was just kind of calming in a sense to the offense. It was a really good offensive showing for the Toronto Raptors.
He was very active just everywhere, and if he didn't get in foul trouble, he probably has a bigger game. Also, we didn't even mention him. Norman Powell had a big game. They needed somebody else to have a scoring punch, especially you mentioned Danny Green only scoring 3 points. Powell came in really aggressive, attacking the rim, knocking down threes, kind of got going. That was the rhythm they needed. They needed some extra pop because we know the Bucks have so much offense, and even if like 2 or 3 guys in the Bucks are playing bad, they have 5 other guys that can play well.
Yeah, I mean, Fred VanVleet was really bad. Once again, the guy just
1 of 11.
And the fact that
he timely 3 though, so I'll give him props on that 1-3 hit.
His only shot of the game. But the fact of the matter is, you had to play him 30 minutes, and it's still the Bucks really couldn't take advantage of the fact that they had him out there for that long. And obviously, Lowry being in foul trouble, so that was good for Toronto to handle that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, I think at some point, Nick Nurse might just have to try Jeremy Lin. Like, I know Lin hasn't played a lot of minutes, and we talked about it on the last show a little bit, but if Fred VanVleet is not giving you any type of scoring, and like the Bucks aren't going to shoot this bad from the field, I think they shot under 40% from the field, under 35% from 3. You need more scoring unless you're going to play Lowry big minutes because you were able to kind of rest him this game because he fouled out. But VanVleet's got to knock down shots. Whatever it is, whatever he needs to do, they need someone to knock down more shots, and he's got to be the guy, or Nick Nurse has to find somebody else on that bench.
Yeah. I mean, and looking at the flip side for Milwaukee, like you mentioned, the shooting numbers, them shooting 37% from the field, 31% from 3. Middleton and Bledsoe, both not good again. Bledsoe, more eye-popping bad. Bench during a lot of key stretches. Antetokounmpo just was off. I mean, it's going to happen when you don't have a consistent jump shot. If you can limit Antetokounmpo on the drive, which Toronto did a very good job of, like you mentioned, Kawhi did a very good job. Their offense gets disrupted. But once again, I mean, George Hill, 7 of 9 from the field, 24.
George Hill trade is a fucking steal. And I don't usually say fuck, but that was a steal. Like, that was supposed to be a salary dump, dude. Like, what?
I mean, and it's also George Hill, Rodney Hood to a lesser extent at this point. Both of these guys are prime examples of how location and the framework of a roster can complement your game better, because this type of space and pace that they play in Milwaukee just really helps a guy like George Hill, who's already a plus defender. And then Brogdon, he looks as healthy. I wouldn't have thought he missed time being healthy. I thought he did a very good job. And I'm waiting for either George Hill or Malcolm Brogdon to push into the starting lineup. I think they needed a little more change going into game 4, because Middleton, I think you're not as worried about him, but Bledsoe is a big concern.
Yeah, Middleton's still doing a solid job on Kawhi and making him work, where Bledsoe just has not been good. And it's really helped Toronto defensively because they're able to sag off him so much and help on Giannis, and that's forcing Giannis to get more attention down low. And George Hill's been really good. I think you have him in the backup role. I know it's weird to kind of bench Bledsoe, but I would probably bench Bledsoe for Malcolm Brogdon, who's been really good. Like, I'm so impressed by how good he's playing coming off injury so soon.
The one thing I do like about Bledsoe is, although the offense is obviously an issue, 3 of 16, I mean, defensively, there's not much to not like about Bledsoe on the defensive end. I mean, he plays physical. He doesn't let you really beat him. So I think that's the one thing why Bledsoe keeps getting so much runtime too, is because defensively you do want him out there. But I think all around you might want to go with Brogdon right now.
And I think the drop-off, though, between Brogdon and George Hill's defense, Brogdon, you could argue maybe is a better defender around the same level, is not as much as a drop-off between Hill and Brogdon's offense compared to Bledsoe. Just Bledsoe just can't hit the three, and that's just, going to hurt you a lot in the playoffs. Also, I think Nikola Mirotic has been pretty rough in the series, too.
Yeah, I mean, I would be okay with them going small. And taking Mirotic out, like having Antetokounmpo play the 4, Middleton at the 3, and then playing a Bledsoe Brogdon. I'm even okay with that if you want to keep Bledsoe in and throw in either Brogdon or George Hill at the 2. But I think Mirotic is better off from the bench to begin with. Let him go against that second unit with a different component out there, because I just don't think it works right now in this series. It hasn't been effective.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you might just go small. I think that might just work out, and then you have plenty of options coming off the bench, because Ersan Ilyasova is not going to have a game 2 every game, so he only had 2 points in this one. Brook Lopez, I thought, was solid again, 16 points, 5 of 10. He had his impact on the game. And
free throws too were a spot we could look at. The Bucks only shot 66%, Raptors shot 80%. Granted, Antetokounmpo being 2 of 7 hurt. Him getting to the line is crucial for that offense. If he's not hitting the shots, then it makes a difference. And of course, I don't know how you felt, but there were a lot of travels between Kawhi and Antetokounmpo during stretches of that game. You can't call it all, but I know you had a tweet. You can call some of them Antetokounmpo, because some of them at times are just absolutely blatant.
Yeah, and I think sometimes he gets away with a little bit of like a stutter step or like a double foot drag, where it's just like, it's hard to notice in real life, and because it's happening so fast and he's so big and he's like just so freak. Like, he literally is a freak. Like, it's hard to officiate him because his Euro step seems like a travel every single time, but it's really not. But there's other plays where he easily travels and they just don't call it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the free throws. That's the difference in a game. This game went to double OT. You hit your free throws, and that goes for the Raptors too. This game wouldn't even been in overtime if Siakam knocked down his free throws. And I think Kawhi, they said that Kawhi was joking with him, like, yo, you made me play an hour extra of basketball because you couldn't hit free throws.
Yeah, I mean, this was a weird game too, because you don't normally see teams that out-rebound, that have out-rebounded another team lose. Like, for example, the Bucks had 63 rebounds to 55 rebounds by Toronto, 13 offensive to 8 offensive. It was just the poor shooting by Milwaukee and some costly turnovers.
20.
Yep.
17 for Toronto, but that 3 turnovers kind of helped make up the deficit in terms of rebounding. So, and the free throws. So it's a really close game. I mean, Toronto can't feel like extremely good after this. Like, they know they have to grind it out to get a win against the Bucks, but they can make it a series if they keep grinding out games. They don't want to get into the high scoring thing. They need to play at a higher pace, but they need to slow down the Bucks pace.
Yeah, I mean, and if the Raptors are hitting threes like they did, for example, Marc Gasol had 4 threes, Siakam and Kawhi both had 2 apiece, Lowry and Powell both had 3. I mean, that's a big bonus for them. Obviously, Van Vliet being 1 of 8 is an eyesore, but
Danny Green 1 of 6. They need Danny Green to just start knocking down threes, because the other parts of his game are fine. Just the fact he's not knocking down threes is just hurting their offense.
I didn't even realize Marc Gasol made 5 shots yesterday, and 4 of them were threes. I didn't even put that together.
And I want to say most of that came in the first half too. I mean, they didn't really need him a ton in the second half, but that first half punch gave them a boost, and that gave them a little bit of a cushion to play with the rest of the game.
And we've talked about this too on the outlet of Marc Gasol, especially on the offense. They give him a lot of space when he's at the top of the 3-point line. They almost dare him to shoot, and at times he's too passive and doesn't take it, and he's more aggressive.
So we got a question in the chat from Adar. Kawhi is the best player thus far, ? Or Giannis's numbers provide more impact?
I wonder if it's in the series or the playoffs.
We could talk this series, then we could talk playoffs.
In this series, I think it's still Antetokounmpo. I mean, his team is up in the series, and I think even in an off game, 12, 23, 7, 1, and 4. I mean, that's so the offense just wasn't there. So for me, I'd probably say Antetokounmpo, but overall in the playoffs, I think it's been Kawhi.
Yeah, I think this series is close. I think you asked me after game 4 because I think they're pretty close to a tie, but Kawhi had that rough game. I want to say he shot like 10 of 26. I think that was game 2, I want to say.
It was game 2 because they both had Lowry and him had 30-plus in game 1.
I think the one thing that stuck out in game 3 was the fact Kawhi was able to kind of slow down Giannis a little bit, and I think people don't realize how strong he really is. They mentioned this on the broadcast. His ability to kind of like slow him down when he's trying to make that spin move with his body. At the end of the series, I'll give my take, but I think right now Giannis has a slight head, and then like you said, for the postseason, Kawhi's just carried Toronto because they haven't been amazing.
Yep. I mean, 240-plus points last series, only done by a couple other future Hall of Famers or Hall of Famers already. So, yeah, it's been a nice tear. It's
been impressive. And I think, you mentioned this in the preview, we talked about this on the other shows, Siakam, if he can play well again, and I think the Nick Nurse adjustment of not having him guard Giannis gave him so much more energy for him to be more impactful offensively, and that's what they really need. They need a second scoring option.
So no calf injury excuses, right, for game 4? Calf injury's gone. He's no longer hurt.
I think that's fair to say, unless he re-aggravates it during the game, but I thought he looked more spry in game 3 than he did in game 1 or 2.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think some of it is just like energy. If you're hurt and you have to guard one of the best players in the NBA, you're not going to play well. But if you're, if he was 100%, maybe it's a different story.
And the crowd was rocking last night too. They really got up for that
Drake
game.
was rocking.
Yeah, he was.
Hard.
He was waving goodbye, but I don't know if you know this, Drake. There's still a game 4 in Toronto. So
yeah. So I'll be interested to see they're going to need their fans really big because they need that bench to play better as well in game 4. So we'll see what happens. If Toronto wins game 4, now we're back to having a series. What do you think is going to happen in game 4?
I know I picked Bucks in 6 originally. But I still just don't trust this Toronto team. Like, this was a really good game for them. It felt like the game that they were going to win through double overtime. Obviously, when
game 1 almost, but except the Bucks didn't make that comeback.
Yeah. So like I kind of like the thought of them. We just won a tough double overtime game at home. We come back in game 4 again in our home crowd. Everybody's juiced up. I like that in favor of Toronto, but I'm going with Bucks in 5. I think they win game 4 and they head back to Milwaukee and they wrap this up.
I'm all in favor of just the game 4 win for Toronto because I just want them to extend the series because we're going to talk about the other series, but that one doesn't have much hope.
Yeah,
to go very far. So I'm hoping that Toronto.
Did you see that if both these teams swept, there would have been 9 days of no basketball?
That's crazy. I know what the final start on May 30th, regardless of whatever happened.
Yeah. We would have had 9 days of nothing. A lot of the same talk.
We would have just had a lot more rumors from Chris Broussard, which we'll touch on later. So I'm hoping that the Raptors can win game 4. I don't feel super confident. I would say I'd give them a 60% chance of winning and the Bucks 40%, but a lot's going to depend on 3-point shooting. And
favorable.
60 to 40. I mean, that's not that favorable. If I went 50-50, it's a coin flip. So
okay. That's fair.
I'm saying, like, the one thing that I would be scared of about Toronto is there's just so many random players. They're not random, but there's so many role players in the Bucks that can just pop off. They can just have a big game. And then the Raptors, it just doesn't feel like they have that many, role players that can just really break out and have a big game. Like, Norman Powell's not going to have another big game in game 4. If he does, I'd be extremely surprised.
Yeah. And, I mean, also for Toronto, you're looking at the fact that Antetokounmpo, Middleton, and Bledsoe were all really bad again in game 3.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee realistically only needs 2 of those guys to be on for them to be a really hard team to beat.
I think if you're Toronto, you're hoping maybe you can get another big Kyle Lowry performance like you saw in game 1 and game 4. That's like your biggest hope because there is a little concern with Kawhi. Like, he played so many minutes and his leg is definitely messed up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't know.
Spurs fans are sick too. So he's like, it's playoffs. You play through it. And they're all like, yeah.
I work with a Spurs fan, and he's just sick to his stomach right now.
Yeah.
But moving on to Warriors and Blazers, 3-0 lead for Warriors. There's not really a ton to say about the series other than Steph Curry's been great, Draymond Green's been great. And even when Portland has a 15-point lead, a 17-point lead, there's just some weird feeling that Golden State's just going to come back and win it. And that's what happened in Game 3. Portland was up by 18.
We are back to the 2015 Golden State or 2016 Golden State Warriors. The 73-win season where it felt like even when they were down, they weren't out of it. And I haven't even felt that way about them with Kevin Durant because they don't have that same – I mean, they still do it, but it's a different team. It's a different layout. They're not – we've mentioned this in the last show. They're not better without Durant, but they play differently. They play faster. The way they move. Game 3 was the best bench performance they've gotten all postseason. I mean, McKinney played some huge minutes. Quinn Cook with the hezzy on Zach Collins was really good. I mean, Iggy went down, a little bit concerning. They got Iggy down with injury, so that's a little bit concerning. But, I mean, Curry looks let loose, free. He doesn't worry about taking 5 shots in a row like he would if Durant was healthy. Clay can actually dribble more than we realize because he doesn't have to. And Draymond's 20 pounds lighter, down 15 points in Game 2. They come back to win, down 13 points in Game 3, come back and win. McCollum, not good again. Lillard came out that he's hurt. And I love that Lillard never, in the post-game, never mentioned the injury, never mentioned he wasn't good, just said, yeah, I guess we're tired, but it's got to be better than the report leaked. So I respect him for not wanting to play the injury card. Which makes sense, though. Separated ribs, that's a tough thing for a guard to play through.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's definitely a major injury. I think you can still be slightly disappointed with his, performances.
Overall, yeah, he's still taking 30-plus footers. Like Paul George said, it's a bad shot. It's a bad shot.
And credit to Golden State, too, because they've done an excellent job of just making his life miserable. And I think, with Kevin Durant being out, they're kind of forced to play better defense, and they've done that in this Portland series, and that's kind of making them a little bit more scary going into the postseason. But when you're getting 19 from Dame Lillard, 5 of 18, you're just not going to win. Like, it's just not going to happen. You need him to have 30. You need CJ to have 30 probably to beat this team unless your role players are just going straight off.
Yeah, and they made some questionable Terry Stotts made some questionable rotation decisions, I thought. He played Seth Curry, for example, for 30 minutes. He only had 5 points. Not necessarily a bad decision, but like Rodney Hood only had 17 minutes, and he's been better. Obviously, he's got a little bit of a hyperextended knee, so he might be a little bit banged up. I could even use more Evan Turner. Evan Turner was really good in 17 minutes. I think he had 12 points on 4 or 5 shooting, hit a 3. Miles Leonard was good in the first half. You kind of figured he was going to come back down to earth because he's definitely not their leading scorer at halftime that he was. I
think right there you kind of felt alarmed. Like they were up, but like, yeah, Miles Leonard is your halftime leading scorer. Like your offense isn't running right, guys.
Yeah, concerning for sure. And then Kanter's just almost unplayable in this series. The Warriors just know how to expose a guy who can't guard the pick and roll and can't play defense.
His mobility is just so, he just doesn't have it. And going against a guy like Steph and Clay, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, and plus with his bad shoulder, he's, Looney, to his credit, he's very physical.
Looney's like one of the most underrated players, I feel like, in the league because he was so big last year, and he's been really big this year too.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Cousins going down. I mean, they've asked him once again to play big minutes, and he's tough. Not a guy who obviously demands the ball offensively, not going to get the ball offensively anyways, but you need him to play defense and to rebound and to be a force around the rim, and he provides just that, and he's pretty quick.
Yeah, he's the perfect like fifth option guy that's just like doing the dirty work out there when you have elite players like Steph, Clay, Draymond, and KD when KD's healthy. So having a guy like Looney, I think, is such a luxury, and I think he'll get a better contract this year. I was surprised, I mentioned this before on the show, that he didn't get a bigger contract this past offseason.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking at somewhere between 7 and 11 million next year.
I could see someone wanting him. I mean, I wouldn't mind him as my backup big. Like, he's shown to be solid. Obviously, some of it's playing with other elite players, but still. And I think another area that sticks out, Golden State obviously shot better, but they still out-rebounded them by 8, 49-41. And I think Portland, that's an area where you kind of have to win if you want to win a game in the series or even force this to go longer.
You got the size. I mean, on paper, you have the size, so to speak, with Collins, Myers, and Kanter. And they're a pretty good rebounding bunch, especially in Kanter, of course. So that's got to be an area you win. Then turnovers. Once again, little bit sloppy on Portland's side. You got to take care of the basketball. And the Warriors have been less sloppy since Durant's left.
Yeah, it's just been a little bit smoother in terms of offensively. You got this series as a sweep. You think it's over tonight?
Yeah, I do think it's over tonight. And actually, Portland only had 11 turnovers. They weren't as bad, but I just felt like they were more costly turnovers.
It happens a lot when you're playing Golden State.
Yeah.
Every turnover seems like a lot.
Yeah, I'm still going with the Warriors in 4. I think the last 2 halftime blown leads is kind of demoralizing, especially with the last one being at home. And they looked, I don't know, the fourth quarter, it was like 6 minutes to go. You had that feel just watching, and Jay was at the game. Even Jay said, like, just felt defeated. Like, the team looked dead. The fans, Jay, who was there, said they were just dead. They were just done. And I don't know. Normally, you don't bounce back in a game 4 like that afterwards. It feels like the Toronto Raptors and Cleveland Cavaliers a couple of years ago when LeBron was nailing floating buzzer beaters on them.
Yeah, and I think also, like, if you look at history, they got swept by the Pelicans last year, and obviously you feel less confident about coming back against a team like Golden State. So, like, you win game 4, you force a game 5 just to lose. Like, I don't think Golden State's is going to lose 2 in a row. So for Portland, really successful season, though, like, considering they went to the Western Conference Finals. It was kind of, I'm not trying to be rude, but it was a little bit lucky, but they still got there, and that's something they can put down.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think it's a season you definitely tip your hat to. It was a very nice job by Lillard and McCollum, especially with that first round series getting past the Thunder, beating the Nuggets in 7 after being down 3-2. It's a good run. Yes, they were favored in the side of the playoff bracket they got, not having to see the Rockets or Warriors, of course, but they got the hand they were dealt, and they played it well, and they got to this stage, and it makes them a more plausible free agent destination. Granted, their cap is terrible, so you have to see if you can work around it. But
you got to get creative.
And McCollum can be serious threats, and you have to wonder what Nurkic healthy would have done for this squad at this junction. Obviously, he's not like a deciding factor, but a guy who averages 16 and 12 wouldn't have hurt this team, especially in a series where we just mentioned rebounding would have been crucial.
Yeah, I agree. I just see what happens with the rest of the Blazers. Maybe it would have been a completely different series. There was rumors that the Blazers tried to go after DeMarcus Cousins in the offseason if they had got him, or maybe they get him this year. But looking at, the news from Magic Johnson today, what were your thoughts on that with him on First Take kind of blowing up the Lakers spot? Obviously, some of it, I think, also some people are kind of exaggerating how it made the Lakers look bad, but some of it also Magic looks bad in it too.
No, I mean, I think it's bad all around. There's nothing good, I think, about somebody going on national TV and pretty much spewing stuff that happened behind closed doors, whether it affects you or the organization, regardless. It was bad all over. Him saying, I wanted Luke Walton fired. They said basically no, so I'm done. And then they fired Luke Walton anyway. So that was, to me, another like blunder. And then him and Rob Pelinka, other GMs telling Magic, don't trust Pelinka, don't trust him. He really wanted to go back on movie dates with his wife.
I get, like, that's what I just don't get. Like, I get it, Magic. Like, you have other, avenues of making money, but being a president of basketball operations for an NBA team, especially one like the Lakers, isn't a part-time job. Like, if you got into it, you need to be committed, and you're going to have to give up things. Like, wow, you gave up your weekends. We give up our weekends all the time working on OTG stuff. Like, it is what it is. Like, you get into it, you expect to roll, and you got to be better. So, and I thought, like, yeah, I get, like, you're blowing up their spot, but, like, if you're still trying to support the Lakers, all you did is just, like, damage them for this offseason and damage possible negotiations they have moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And then for, like, if I'm Genie, like, I'm just like, yo, why do you we're so close and we're so good for, like, you're not helping me. Like, you're burning me on a constant basis by doing this little press tour.
And there was reports that came out that said she reached out to Magic and asked if there's anything she needed to know about why he resigned, and he didn't say anything. So, like, you're not going to tell her, like, how you feel, and then you're going to go on First Take and do it. I think that's a really bad look for him. And I think a lot of people thought he was kind of a joke as a president, and it kind of continues to seal that point. But obviously the Lakers took major damage here because their organizational structure is just completely a mess.
Yeah, no, it's it gave me the feel today that they don't get anybody.
Yeah, I think you already saw reports, I think, over this past weekend that they're almost starting to eye like the secondary targets of players that maybe aren't the big names because they have a feeling that they're not going to land them. So they're like talking about going after Bradley Beal, talking about Derek Favors, like guys that aren't big names, but they could still help the Lakers take another step.
Right. And it's almost solidified in my mind that when because obviously they're going to try and add talent, they're going to try and get better. There's no question about it. LeBron's okay. He's okay with how this season ended, and the fact that they kind of are looking forward. That number 4 pick gets moved, I think.
Yeah, I would put it at like 85%.
Yeah. There's no rookie prospect you get that helps really win now, and you're trying to win now. So I think that pick, especially now with the lack of possibilities at free agency, like you mentioned, I mean, with everything that came out today, do you really want to play for a guy like Pelinka and a guy like Jeannie Buss, where there's all this just lack of communication? And he also mentioned, which I thought was odd, how like the promotional side of the Lakers also like had a voice on like the basketball side. So it's just like, why are it's just lack of foundation and
lack of structure.
Yeah, lack of structure.
You need somebody that's going to make the final decision. Yeah, like I get it. And I think Magic was also like a little bit weird. Where he's like, oh, everyone shouldn't have an input. I think that's fine. Everybody has an input. But at the end of the day, one person has the final say in the final input. And I felt like also she's like trying to have too much decision in what's going on. Like, I get you're the owner, but you hired Magic to do this job. Trust him to do the job. And I thought like Luke in that whole situation was kind of like, yeah, Luke was an amazing coach for sure. And I know Laker fans hated him, but also the roster structure was pretty terrible too. So it was like, all right, take some blame. Be like, maybe we didn't put the best roster out there for him, especially in this modern NBA.
And yet he still said, though, LeBron James will win a ring with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Good luck. I mean, the probability of it happening, there is a scenario where I could see if they land Anthony Davis and then they sign Kyrie Irving. Like, I still think that is possibly in play because Kyrie going there doesn't really have much to do with the Lakers. It's more so his relationship with LeBron and Anthony Davis. It'll be interesting to see with the Pelicans, like what they're going to do in terms of like, are they going to make the move with the Lakers? Or are they still going to be kind of upset about last year and forced to another team? What are your thoughts on that? Because there was some news from Chris Broussard, who we take with a giant grain of salt. He said the Nets are the most active team trying to get Anthony Davis.
I mean, I'm not surprised by it. I think if you're a team like the Nets who finally made the playoffs, you have some nice young pieces, a lot of cap space, a lot of young prospects. You could move in a deal for Anthony Davis if you wanted to. I know we tweeted about it briefly, and like I think a sign and trade for D'Lo would be a big part of that move. Because I think if you're the Pelicans, you get a young point guard in Zion. It's kind of the 1-2 combination you want. Timelines don't match up fantastically, but I mean, they're pretty much on point, I think.
Yeah, no, D'Angelo's 23.
So. Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's still fine.
Next 10 years for both guys is,
yeah. And I think if you're the Nets, you probably also move Jared Allen in that, because if you're getting Anthony Davis, I think you're okay with moving a guy like Jared Allen. So I think there's some nice thought to it from the Pelicans' perspective. And if for the Nets, you get Anthony Davis, then you certainly open the door wide open for Kyrie Irving, and then you don't really mind losing D'Lo. Then you got LeVert, Kyrie, and Anthony Davis, and you probably still have Joe Harris. I mean, I don't know what the asking price is for Davis necessarily, but you probably have still a very good core, and you're in the East, so then you all of a sudden become a home court advantage favorite.
Exactly. And then, the Nets' former assistant GM, Trogan Landon, is now the GM of the Pelicans. So that kind of gives them an inside step. Obviously, a great relationship with Sean Marks. He's going to value the Nets players a little bit more than someone who hasn't been, with the team for as long as he has. And I think if you're the Nets, there's a couple scenarios where you consider. I think if you could get D'Angelo to a sign and trade, which is extremely difficult. It's not easy to do sign and trades. So if you were to get a sign and trade, I think you do D'Angelo, Rodions, Jared Allen, your 3 picks for this year, and then maybe a future pick, and then maybe you can get them to take Allen Crabbe back in the deal. And if you have to throw in anybody else, if you're able to keep Karis LeVert and then you were able to sign Kyrie, LeVert, and then have AD, like you're in a really good position, and then you're still going to have some cap space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
but this is just like a best case scenario, which I still think that the Lakers could offer a better deal, because they could say, hey, we're going to give you 4. We're going to give you all the guys we mentioned this year. We're also going to give you future picks. And then, hey, I think that's still a better offer.
I still think if I'm listing all the destinations, the Lakers to me aren't in the top 3. And I only see it for Anthony Davis. I'd probably say Knicks, Nets, Clippers at this point in time. Actually, no.
Boston.
No. Sorry. I'd probably take out the Knicks and put in Boston. because I think the Knicks are like an outside chance because they have to package the third pick, which would probably be RJ Barrett just because of the Zion Barrett stuff. But I just don't think it makes sense because I just don't think people want to play for Dolan still. I think ownership is a big thing, and I think like the Knicks and Lakers are literally like side by side on trying to be dysfunctional franchises in ownership areas.
I think the Knicks could offer a really good package if Anthony Davis is interested in there, because they could offer, number 3, some of the extra picks they got from Dallas. If they'd have to include Mitchell Robinson, Kevin Knox, and probably like Dennis Smith Jr. and multiple guys. So they'd be giving up a lot, but they do have a ton of cap space. So in a scenario where they do get Anthony Davis, they could possibly sign Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and then assemble maybe one of the greatest teams ever. So I think you have to consider every scenario. Then Boston obviously still there too, because Jason Tatum is the best asset mentioned in any of these deals because he looks like a sure lock to be an all-star player and possibly a superstar player.
It's so funny. I don't know if you saw this. Somebody tweeted like an underrated youth tweet or whatever. And he had like Tatum, Lauri Markkanen, pretty sure he had Jared Allen, and like a bunch of these guys who are like not underrated. Mm-hmm. Well, Jared Allen actually might be slightly underrated, but like a majority
might be slightly underrated depending on who you ask. But Jason Tatum definitely is not.
Definitely not underrated. Yeah, it was a funny list. Donovan Mitchell was on the list too. It's just like, all right, bud.
It's like Tatum and Mitchell were both up for Rookie of the Year last year. That's a real thing. But it'll be interesting. And I think the Clippers, they are a dark horse. I think they have a treasure chest of assets where I don't know if they have that like one really big piece where you're like, oh yeah, I really want this.
I think personally looking at the Clippers, I think the Clippers are more of a lock to get Kawhi over anybody else. I think that's probably like the ideal fit for them. Mm-hmm. And they're probably their number 1 target at this point.
They're hoping for Bucks and 5. They're like, we're rooting for Kory Waldron over here.
Yeah.
But because it's interesting to see what happens over there with the Clippers because they have money and they're going to obviously make some moves. Corey, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Kawhi does not end up back in Toronto next year. I put that on the Instagram story. That was my thought and take of the day. Kawhi does not return to Toronto next year. This is a 1-year fling.
So do you think he's a lock to go to the Clippers, or do you think there's a possibility he go to another team?
I think there's a possibility he goes to another team. I think at the end of the day, Kawhi is going to look at the best chance to win. He's going to look at the surrounding cast, supporting cast, the market size and everything else. I think LA is his ideal destination. It's home, but I think Brooklyn has a good chance, and I wouldn't rule out Danny Ainge doing some crazy shit to try and get Kawhi.
True. That's like kind of underdog thing. I was actually really intrigued that they didn't push harder to make a trade for him because I thought that always made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
he fits the culture a lot more than a guy like Kyrie does, just from we're going to work hard and try and win, and we're not going to really talk much.
Yeah, and he doesn't talk. But that wraps it up for today. As always, thank everybody for checking us out. iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. Check out, we are dropping some new T-shirts, Design Tree / Off the Glass. Going to be some fire stuff up over the next 2 days.
For sure. Peace out, Knuckleheads.